In the fallout of the EU referendum in Britain, I have been asked what my position was and why this was the case. This channel, when it was originally conceived, is meant to be a gaming channel, and thus, if you do not wish to hear my political and world views and the reasoning behind them, then close the video now. But if you are interested in such things, then enjoy as I continue with my reasoning. I'm going to preface this entire preamble by saying I believe humanity is ultimately stupid. We fight amongst ourselves based upon petty and trivial notions when we should be uniting and turning our thoughts to the stars. But the problem is we're not advanced enough to live in harmony, and I wish that we were. I actually have several reasons for wanting to leave the EU. I try to be aware of my limits, and as such my decision was not exactly based upon economics, for I have no real knowledge of that area, nor did I debate or make my decisions upon rights, for exactly the same reason. I will thus insert here that my beliefs and views in this opinion might be totally wrong. I'm a materialist in the sense that I base opinion based upon the facts before me. If the facts change, then so does my opinion in quite a few cases. That said, I'm also historically educated, in the sense that I am aware that it's entirely possible to arrive at different conclusions and viewpoints based upon exactly the same set of data. Moving on to the actual reasons for my voting to leave, I partially made my decision based upon immigration, but that is tied to the umbrella term I've given to my reason, simply named the handling of the Syrian refugee crisis and its sequelae. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm considered to be educated, I'm considered to be young. I mean, I feel old because I realize I'm now old enough to look after and be responsible for children, but that's another point entirely. The trends of the Brexit voting showed and implied that the younger generations and those with qualifications were more likely to vote Remain, and those of the older generations and without qualifications were more likely to vote out. There was a piece by Channel 4 before the vote happened which particularly irked me, because these were some of the many unsubtle attempts to degrade and deride those who voted Leave. I also felt, like as the aforementioned piece by Channel 4, among others, that the media, for all its purported neutrality, has been anything but. They will give you divisions, for example, upon education, upon age, and upon ethnicity, but it's amusing, for instance, how no one dares to make divisions based upon income. Attacking the poor, for now, seems to be a step too far. But I digress. If, for whatever reason it comes to pass that more explanation of my views comes into necessity, I will address them in another video for, well, I have many other views, but I'm going to try and keep to this point. That is another thing to state about divisions, but moving swiftly on. The Syrian problem. With its roots in the Arab Spring, where regime change and subsequent instability was running wild, Assad refused to back down. Long story short, Syria and the region is unstable, to say the least, and thus we have a pretty mass exodus on our hands. I don't think anyone can blame them for this. No one wants to live in fear of being killed, and so they left. This is logical. They went to Turkey, to Jordan, and fastly not to the Saudis, which is its own can of worms. I am under no illusion that the likes of Jordan and Turkey aren't the most stable places in the world either, but they're still sovereign states that are whole. But that's digression again. The refugees didn't stop there, and they're also trying to get to Europe. This is another video's worth of thinking as to at what point a refugee is different from a migrant. But for the purposes of my proposed viewpoint, it isn't relevant. The fact remains, there is plenty to drive to enter Europe, seeing the likes of Greece, Hungary, Macedonia, and others piled high with a situation that has not been seen in modern times. I ignore the question of where refugees ultimately ends up, as, whilst it calls my opinion, it is inconsequential to my final thoughts. My eye is drawn by how Germany, in its great wisdom, unilaterally opened the gates of Europe. For all the current bluster about how the European Union is a union, And as a shining example that raised my eyebrow higher than it ever has gone, how on the Monday after the Brexit result was in, Merkel wished for, and I quote, all 27 remaining EU states must work together to prevent any centrifugal forces. When it came to this response, Merkel single-handedly sought to state, oh, it's fine, we're united. And yet, when it came to the refugee response, she seemed to specifically tell, on behalf of Europe, refugees welcome. As long as you got to Germany, you would find asylum. Germany is rich. Germany can cope. The rest of Europe is not Germany. And yet, I would find it hard to argue that this declaration did not exacerbate the burden upon Europe by attracting even more people. Was this declaration done by consulting the likes of the border states by which this burden of migration is overwhelmingly placed upon? Does the likes of Greece in all its debt-ridden glory have the capacity or capability to cope? Did Merkel care? Let's put that aside for the moment. Let's take a step back and talk about facts. People are dying and suffering in a war zone. They wish to leave. Many tout it is our moral obligation to help, and let us assume it is true, because I don't wish to argue about it one way or another. The outcome of that is inconsequential. To open the doors of Europe and invite them here is utterly incomprehensibly stupid. Put it simply, someone is dying of thirst. I have water. I say, hey, I can help you, but you'll have to come here for it. You would think I'm bloody mad. Why the hell can't I, the more able person, go over there to help them? And this is what David Cameron decided the British response should be, and it is leading the European Union doing this, sending aid to them. Instead of bringing Europe around a table and say, raise a special tax based upon a country's prosperity and sending the proceeds to help stabilize and look after the region, all refugees are welcome? And this is how I see the Syrian problem. Germany is saying, we Europeans can help you. Just get here. You know, across the small matter of a war zone, a country at least, a freaking sea, and then half of Europe, just to get to Germany. And thus, I have the issue of the rest of Europe was not consulted on this. For all the talk of a union, not only has it been made as a questionable decision, it's also been made when the consequences of such an action befell areas that don't even pertain to Germany itself. I mean, sure, there's the refugee relocation programs that all member states share the burden. Okay, but this sounds like a great idea. Until you realize that actually Germany made a unilateral decision and then consult the rest of the union to help out with the mess that it made. This is what raised the biggest concern with me and turned my whole idea towards leaving the EU. Before this point, I just didn't really care. But the way how it was demonstrated that one state clearly had the power to do as it pleased, whilst the rest of the Europe can pick up the pieces, that alarmed me. And now there's Turkey. Years ago, negotiating with Turkey was a pipe dream. Erdogan is oppressing journalists and public figures for speaking out of line. This is not compatible with European values of freedom of speech, but again, that's not my main point. The point I'm going to state here is that there are now new negotiations with Turkey. We're going to make deals with them to deal with the refugee crisis. And who is driving these negotiations but Germany? And it's a pattern emerging. And this is not democracy. To use an analogy from medicine, if you see a constellation of symptoms at the end of the day, the patient may or may not follow the course of illness you believe they will. I see these unilateral actions, and the rest of us have to shoulder them. and I see the cliff that this European train is about to go over. You could stay on the train and divert its course, but the problem there becomes that there's another 27 people on the train who each want to decide where the heck you wish to go, and you're not even the strongest one there. Furthermore, you either jump now or not at all. This is a referendum, not a neverendum, and it takes courage to jump off of that train. Accept that I cannot foresee the future. I accept that I cannot guarantee the European Union will fall off a cliff. And I cannot guarantee that we cannot have reformed the Union. I don't pretend to. But I ask you this. What possible reason would you have to reform a system which works in your favor? Germany is rich. It holds the cards. It's like, okay, you have instances like the suffragettes where the system was against them and they changed it, but there's a whole bundle of other issues behind it. But moving swiftly on, the point is, are the poorer countries, such as Greece, ever going to be able to influence Germany and say, actually, maybe you should change what you're doing? I don't think so. And thus we arrive at another important point in my decision, and that is the point of consequences. No one should make a decision without considering consequences of their actions, and for a decision as big as this, doubly so. I'm no economics expert, but I was not oblivious to basic facts. Markets hate uncertainty. The economy would take a hit if we left. But my conclusion from all of that decision making was, does it matter? When I was faced with the choice of choosing a career path, it boiled down to law or medicine. I liked debates, I liked reason, but fundamentally I could not picture myself fighting for something I did not believe in. To fight and defend something or someone I knew was wrong just did not sit well with me, regardless of the money involved. Some people are happy to leave their morals and qualms and belief by the wayside for the prospect of a better life. And admittedly, in the modern world, I believe each of us will compromise if it means that something is going to be easier. But in all of us, there is always going to be a bottom line of which we will never cross. To me, the economic argument could be cast iron guaranteed to be on the side of the Remain camp, and I would not care. I voted leave because the direction of the Union was taking us somewhere which I did not wish for us to go. I believe that the Union is about to fall off a cliff, and looking at what the rest of Europe is doing, how, for instance, in the Balkans, that they're trying to work amongst themselves, Eastern Europe, to close off the Balkan route, thus defying Merkel, how the Netherlands wants to hold a referendum, how France wants to hold a referendum, how Catalonia wants independence from Spain, and all the other politics of independence. I don't think the European Union was going in the right direction. If there was a second referendum, although I doubt it ever be called, I would again vote leave without a second thought. You know me as Sovietpride on this channel. Regardless of whether you agree, you disagree, it would probably still be nice to hear your thoughts, opinions, and of course, share, because the more I learn, the better I feel about the opinion I have. Thank you for listening.